Transform your audience with powerful presentations from EMJ Marketing's elite speakers. Check out their website for more information, emjmarketing.com. Four Nations Faceoff keeps rolling tonight. USA versus Finland. We're going to get into that. It opened last night with Canada beating Sweden 4-3 in the Bell Center. Jason Gregor watched it, of course, from Edmonton Sports 1440, the Jason Gregor Show. And Jason, we're kind of taking everybody's opinions on the game. I'm wondering what yours was, Canada's opening victory.
Well, what I expected, high intensity, great pace. It was a good game. You know what? Kudos to Sweden for coming back down 2 in the third. I thought Canada's defense maybe a little fatigued from only going with 5 guys in such a fast-paced game with the injury to Shea Theodore. And, you know, let's bring 10 minutes of 3-on-3 to the regular season next year, please.
Not a bad start. Oh, it didn't take long. What was it, 106 or something into the new overtime format for them to end it? But do you think the hockey is going to get better as this tournament goes on? I thought there was kind of a temperature-taking night. Like if Canada had kept rolling, Jason, it would have been 10-0. Let's be honest.
Well, I think Sweden, though, I give Sweden credit. Like, they kind of found their bearings there because you're right. For the first 10, 50 minutes, it was all Canada, which doesn't really surprise me. The Bell Center's rocking and they're going crazy. And you know what? There is a home ice advantage here, no question. So, you know, Sweden did, you know, they're down 2-0. And I didn't think Canada generated a ton in the second period. And, you know, outside of the, you know, the stone goal. So I thought Sweden did a pretty good job of kind of finding a way to just slowly get back in the game. Canada did have some chances, but you know, not as many as they had earlier. I thought when they're up 1-0, you know, they had a few that could have gone up 2 or 3 even before the Brad Marchand goal. So you know, Canada just didn't capitalize on their chances. I felt when they had a chance to go up 3 or 4-0.
Let me just ask you this before we talk about tonight's game. A lot of people don't really understand what this is, and that's fine. But this is the 9th tournament like it. There were 5 Canada Cups and 3 World Cups prior to this. What's your favorite memory out of all of them? What's the one that stands out to you?
Well, the one that stands out the most to me was 87 because, you know, it was first time seeing Gretzky and Lemieux together. And, you know, it was up against the Russians. It was a best-of-3 final, which I love. I'd love to see them come back to something like that. Like even in 96, right? Like having best-of-3s, I think, is better. But, you know, every one of those games was 6-5. And I really think it, you know, like when I look at this tournament, we always talk about the growth of hockey. And when you see hockey at the Olympics, I don't think it's the best showcase of hockey because you got way too many low-scoring games. You got a bunch of nations who know they can't compete with the skill, so they sit back. Like last Olympics, Switzerland played 4 games and scored 4 goals in every game. Like that's not entertaining hockey to me. And so 87 was entertaining. It was back and forth both ways. There was still great goaltending, just had a lot of chances. And so, you know, I hope we see more of that.
And you and I are about the same age, too. It was right in our wheelhouse of hockey watch. 87 for me, too. It was so much fun. Now, Stephen Ellis, who you would know very well from Daily Faceoff, said this is the best group of talent USA has ever put together. And I don't know if Stephen was even born in 96, Jason. Like, we're going to see tonight, Canada versus Finland. This is a great group for USA, no doubt. But that 96 group seemed pretty special to me. And they won it.
Well, the 96 team was very good. They had a lot of good players on it. You know, this group of Americans, and I have an article coming up tomorrow at Oilers Nation, because I've seen a lot of people talk about, oh, you know, this is the fastest American team. And I'm like, well, the great part of stats is you can actually find them if you want to see who's the quickest. And newsflash, maybe not as quick as you think, but they're very skilled. Now, the Quinn Hughes injury is a huge blow to them. That'd be like Canada losing Cale Makar. Right, like Quinn Hughes is very, very dynamic, and you know the U.S. they have skill, but do the U.S. have more skill than Canada? I don't think so. And I think if you went player by player, looking at that 96 team to this team, I think it'd be pretty close for sure. Now it's like anything; it's recency bias. This is new, and this is here, and that's great. But like I can't wait for the Saturday game. I don't want to look past tonight, and I don't think the Americans will either. I expect them to come out, and you know Finland's a long shot in this tournament, especially with the injury to Miro Heiskanen and Riista Line. Their back end, like they have one defenseman, Roddy, Esa Lindell, only one who could play on any of these other 3 teams. The other 5 wouldn't be on their team, not even close. So I just think Finland's in a They're a big underdog, and underdogs can win, but they make no mistake. They're the biggest underdog in the tournament. And, I think Canada, USA, and then Finland, Sweden, like Saturday rivalry night, man, I can't wait. That's going to be unreal. Like when you look at everything else that's going on right now, I hope Canada kicks their ass.
Write it down, guys. Well, we got a party planned. Pizza, tacos, Saturday night here in Florida to watch the game, Canada, USA. It's going to be amazing. I'm assuming you think Canada's going to win this thing. We know who you're cheering for, but I'm cheering for Canada and think they'll win. But did you make a pre-tournament prediction?
Well, I had Canada, US in the final. And, I think it's going to be close. It will come down like, hey, Binnington in overtime was great last night. But, I didn't love that second goal for sure. So, you know what? Obviously, the U.S. has an advantage in goaltending, no question, right? I think everybody watching the tournament would agree with that. But Canada still has the advantage at forwards, and with Quinn Hughes out, I do like overall. Although the Shea Theodore injury, that's a huge blow for Canada, man. Like Shea Theodore, probably the most underrated Canadian defenseman. When you go in talking about hype in the tournament, like he's played great in Vegas. Anybody who watches Vegas will tell you how good he is, and that's a big blow. Now, Sanheim's good, don't get me wrong, but I think he's just a slight step below Shea Theodore.
I want to switch to football in a second, but I wonder what your brushes were with Wayne Gretzky. As an Edmonton guy that you are, and now a longtime Edmonton media guy, he is so great on the TNT panel. He's, like I said last hour, he could be the new Don Cherry if he wanted to be. He just doesn't want to be. He called Sweden horrific last night because they didn't care. I don't know if you saw his panel analysis. They didn't have a shot for 15 minutes. They didn't care. You must have had a lot of brushes with the great one in your time there. What have they been like?
Well, Wayne is definitely, as you have to in media, you have to have a stronger opinion. You can't just sit on the fence. And, I think Wayne's realized that. You see, like Wayne Gretzky, when he was the player and the icon that he was, Wayne never had any issues at all. For a superstar where people will always try to find something wrong with you, he had none of it in his playing career. Obviously, there's been, some things that get him in hot water post-career. That's fine. But when he played, Wayne Gretzky was one of the nicest guys you've ever met. I wouldn't like Wayne and I aren't friends by any stretch of the imagination. I've met him, I've talked to him, like he knows who I am, I know who he is. But any interaction I've had with Wayne, probably, and it's been less lately, right? I don't see him around as much. He's not the draft or things that I go to, but I actually caddied in Wayne Gretzky's golf tournament that he used to put on in Edmonton when I was a teenager. And I caddied for Charlie Huddy, and Wayne was in the foursome ahead of us. And, you're a young kid, like Wayne Gretzky, when you're a teenager in Edmonton was like, almost bordering on a god, for goodness sakes. It was just like, I got to see him. And, Charlie Huddy and Marty McSorley were unbelievable guys. And, I did get to kind of, meet Gretzky for a brief time then. And I thought that was a big highlight. And I've met him many times in my professional career, and he's always been nice to me.
Yeah. But he's here. West Palm Beach. Everybody's here. Lemieux's here. Doug McLean's here. Bernie Perrance, Bobby Orr's. They're all here. See him all the time. It's fantastic. What's fantastic is what the Edmonton Elks are doing in free agency. I said before free agency opened, Jason, that they're winning free agency, and they only added to it over the last week. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting to see a team in free agency, Rod, and you've covered the league for a long time, but you bring in basically, three guys from the Toronto Argonauts defensive line in Serezna, Brinkman, and Robbie Smith. And then, of course, Demetrius Maxey as their D-line coach. So, that's big. In the secondary, you bring in Trey Fort's twin brother, Ty, from Winnipeg, and he's a hell of a player. He's not just Trey Fort's twin brother. He's an elite cornerback, right? Kletchy at the safety position. They bring in Beer to kind of solidify their O-line. I still think I expect them to bring in some strong competition for American/imports, whatever you want to call it, because they've got massive roster flexibility now with so many starting Canadians on defense and that can play in other positions, right? They got a few starting Canadian wide receivers if they want. So, Trey Ford, they don't use him as a Canadian, but it snaps, with the new rules now, Rod. They count as a Canadian when you want them to. So they got a lot of roster flexibility. But you got to win now, right? It's great on paper. I never get too excited about, quote, winning free agency, because the Winnipeg Blue Bombers haven't won free agency for 5 years, and all they've done is go to the Grey Cup every year. So, you know what? Edmonton, they did have some money to spend. I thought they spent it in areas that, Ed Hervey wanted to improve the O-line, the D-line, and in their secondary, which is good. Their linebacking core comes back, pretty solid. So to me, it comes down to, I expect them to be better. They had some good players last year. They had a terrible culture in Edmonton. You had the GM and the coach, side swiping the quarterback at any turn possible. It was embarrassing. So Chris Morris and Ed Hervey will bring a lot more professionalism to the organization, and that will help. And you know what? They got to get some fans back, let's be honest. So I think winning always helps, but bringing back some of the old green and gold will help for sure.
And Mark Killam as the face of the team in a lot of ways is great. Like here's the thing. You and I have known each other a very long time, and I'm pulling for Edmonton to turn it around, because all those wars we had over the years, that franchise treated me first class. Calgary, another story. But Edmonton, always first class. And I feel like, Jason, you guys get off on the right foot, that place could be filled, or at least like 30, 35, up to 40,000. I think they're just waiting. Right. Well,
I like the decision, Rod, that they're not opening up the upper bowl until they sell out the lower bowl. It's smart. Any facility, I don't care where you're at, when you have everybody together in a condensed area, it sounds better. It's going to be a better atmosphere. It looks better on television, all of the above. So, I think that's their goal. And then, you have certain games against Calgary and Saskatchewan where maybe you can open up certain areas in the second deck, but only after sellouts. And you know what? Because the lower bowl in Edmonton is still bigger than most of the stadiums across the league. So, you know what? You can have 32,000 in the lower bowl, and that's a great crowd. And, it would be great to see Edmonton get back to 40,000 plus, but baby steps. Let's try to see if they can get to 30 plus every game.
I apologize. I've just seen all these comments come in from your adoring audience. Rich in Edmonton writes in, he says, Chris Morris will restore the EE pride. Bomber Boy in Calgary writes in, he says, Edmonton versus Winnipeg, Western Conference matchup. And before we switch it to Oilers to end, Ted in Red Deer says, hey, Jason, how has Ed Hervey changed the vibe around the team and city?
Well, you know what? He had being part of the organization for so long. Like, really, if you look at the last 20 years, Rod, the only time that the Elks had any sort of sustained success were the 4 years where Ed was the GM. And prior to that, it was a gong show from 2006 on. So from 2006 till now, they've had 4 years, and the rest have been pretty much a tire fire, which with lots of drama. And so I think there's lots of people that look, Ed's a straight shooter. He's learned too. Like, Ed was a little crusty, and Ed and I are really good friends. He would admit that he probably made some errors first time as a GM, and as everybody does, right? I made tons of errors earlier in my career, probably still make lots now. But him and Morris have brought just a professionalism. Ed's very straightforward. The players have always respected playing for him, and he does a lot of the work, right? He's in the building late every night right now, and he does a lot of scouting. So, he puts a big emphasis on Canadians. I think he knows what's successful in the CFL and what you need. Obviously, you need a great quarterback, but you need good O-line and D-line play, and then build your team out from there. And, he brings in Mark Killam, who has a great reputation of being a coach who players want to play for. And I think that's massively important.
We'll end it on this. The Edmonton Oilers, reigning Western Conference champions. What's it going to take for them to get back there and finish it off, do you think?
You know what? It's a good question. It's tight in the West. The Miro Heiskanen injury and how long that is, man, that's a huge impact for Dallas. I won't be surprised if Jim Nill decides to use that LTIR and load up his team. But Stan Bowman's got some money from Evander Kane. I think Edmonton, Rod, they got to get grittier. They don't have, like, to win, you have to have different dimensions. You don't need everybody who's fast, right? You need other skill sets. And Edmonton doesn't have a lot of physicality amongst their wingers for sure. So that's something I think they could use. They could use a right shot center on the fourth line. That would help. And, I still think they're going to get some defensive depth. So they got the most cap space they've had in a long, long time. So it'll be up to Stan Bowman to see what moves he can make. But hey, you got Draisaitl, who right now is playing the best player in the game. And then you got this other guy in Connor McDavid, and he's pretty good too. So, their top end's good. They'll need Evan Bouchard to kind of round out his game a little bit and reduce the errors that he's made in the regular season. Now, he's proven it the last two playoffs. Bouchard's been great. So, they're hoping that maybe he can get back to that. But a defenseman, and they need some ruggedness up front, Rod. Like, that just you can't get pushed around. I think they missed Kane in the final against Florida last year, right? I thought Florida had a few more dogs than Edmonton did, and I think that's something they need. I know Kane could come back for the playoffs, Rod, but guy hasn't played a game since June. Like, if he comes back, you're probably hoping he's a bottom six forward, and and if he plays better than that, great. But I'm not penciling in Evander Kane to be a top six guy when he returns. I just think that's unrealistic.
A fantastic update. Jason, thanks for the time, and enjoy the hockey.
Rod, enjoy it, buddy. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to Finland, USA tonight. Should be awesome.
I can tell. Sports 1440's Jason Gregor from the Jason Gregor Show. The Progressive Insurance text line is open, 902-518-3033. And Allie from Texarkana, you've showed up just in time, because it's you and me the rest of the way, including a sports update right after this break. We're only on the air in the USA today on Game Plus, no Canada, but that's okay. We're streaming live on YouTube and Facebook, and of course podcasting wherever the best podcasts are found.